And before we get started, thank you to all my subscribers and a very special thank you to my Patreon and Coffee supporters, Poner and Timey. Poner wanted me to shout out his ERB podcast on the Lay Epic channel, where he says, when he does his episode on this battle, he plans to feature Shakespeare expert Lavender Whale, partner of Schaeferillis Productions, to give some thoughts. And it's a good podcast, so I'm personally excited about that. Go check it out and join the ERB Discord server, link on the Lay Epic channel. And Timey also wanted me to do a shout out, this time to Animation vs. Anything, with her comment, watch Puss in Boots vs. Cat in the Hat by Eddie FRB. It doesn't have the things rapping, which I don't understand. What's wrong with these?
Tell me!
Oh, you'll find out. I'm about to talk about it. On with the show. What a different style of beat we've got on this battle. It has that 2000s club hip-hop sound that's got me expecting Lil Jon to just show up and yell shots at any given moment. It is kinda cool though.
Dr. Seuss!
So we have Mickey Meyer here as Dr. Seuss. Frankly, I forgot that this battle had two guests since George Watsky is the big name for the episode, and Meyer doesn't even rap or have lines for his one and only ERB appearance. And on the surface, he seems like a very left field choice for the show. But looking it up, his circumstances are pretty similar to Lisa Nova, who played Sarah Palin in the 4th episode. Like Lisa, he doesn't come from a musical background, but rather from the business side of the entertainment world. And he was, also like her, in a pretty high up position within Maker Studios at the time as the executive producer for epic rap battles of history. All that is to say, while yes, he is a very impressive businessman, I don't love, again, having someone so removed from the music world being involved in the battle. Granted, this issue is mitigated by him not having actual lines, but he still does have a performance. And we'll talk about that performance a little while later. For now, let's get on with it. Alright, big moment. George Watsky on the mic for the first time in the show, and not for the last time. Watsky is basically a modern day Renaissance man. He has poetry, rapping, producing, writing, and acting all under his belt, and he's not even 40. Good for him, honestly. Back in 2011, he was already known on the comedy rap side of the internet for his Pale Kids Rap Fast video, which is basically the joke of White and Nerdy meets that one section of Rap God that's really fast. It's still impressive on a watch now, and 2011 would have certainly blown some minds. His fast rapping ability would essentially become a hallmark of his style, and we'll get to hear a bit of that in this battle. Trying to figure out if he was cast here for a specific reason, I first wondered if he was a Maker Studios label mate with Lloyd and Peter, as was the case with Tim Chantarasu, but looks like Watsky was self-produced at this point. I'm just going to assume it's an example of big YouTubers in the same niche doing a crossover to help promote each other's work.
Come bite my thumb, I hope you know the stakes.
So starting out, Shakespeare is appropriately verbally throwing down a challenge, saying, "Come bite my thumb." Come bite my thumb was, in Shakespeare's England, basically a combo middle finger and invitation to a fight. But what follows this "I hope you know the stakes" thing, it's not a reference, quote, or anything as far as I can tell. He's basically just saying, go f*** yourself. Hope you know what that means. Which, like, no matter how you slice it, it's an awkward line. So while I like the opener, I think the follow-up to it is a bit messy and odd, so it'll be canceling out to a neutral.
I'll put a slug between your shoulder blades.
Absolutely no you won't, William. So a slug in this context is a shotgun slug. Slugs aren't quite bullets, but they function more or less the same. The thing is, they weren't invented until maybe the late 1800s. So Shakespeare, who died in the early 1600s when they still had to hold the gun on a stick to aim it, will not be shooting anyone with a slug, and we're taking a point off for the egregious historical inaccuracy. And yes, maybe this could be a reference to Romeo plus Juliet where they have guns, but I don't think it is since they don't use any extra visual reference and they don't mention anything related to the movie in the rest of the battle. Also, it's really funny he's using a slug because slugs are used specifically because they are less lethal to humans than things like buckshot. Like, yes, obviously getting shot directly in the shoulder blades is bad no matter what, but I think it's kinda silly he chose the option specifically designed for safety.
Then ask what light through yonder poser breaks.
What light through yonder poser? Huh? So obviously, what light through yonder window breaks is the original quote. It comes from Romeo and Juliet, one of Shakespeare's most famous plays, and it's probably one of the most well-known Shakespeare quotes in general. But through yonder poser? I mean, a poser is, well, it's still slang that's used, but it was way more common back in 2011. You know, you're a fake, you're a phony, you're a poser. The implication is Shakespeare saying, you aren't a good writer. Compared to me, you're a poser. And I was hoping maybe poser was a word Shakespeare invented, since that happened with quite a few words that we we use, but I learned that not only is poser originally a French word that was adapted to English, but it also didn't even start getting used until around the 1800s. And in this and any context, I don't understand how any sort of lighting would be breaking through a poser. Unless that person has glass bones and paper skin, they'll be blocking that light pretty effectively. Unless... Is he saying he'll see the sunlight through the bullet hole from the slug in the previous line? If so, that's super morbid and not in a fun way. It's a negative. I don't care if it's a valid reference. What it actually is saying is essentially gibberish.
I have been iambic on that assy bastard.
And right, so I guess this is as good a place as any to talk about this. So for the whole battle, Shakespeare's lines are set up in what's called iambic pentameter. It's a fairly specific way to structure lines and used to be fairly common, especially in poetry and theater because of the unique way it stresses syllables. The best way I can describe it without getting into the weeds regarding language theory is that iambic pentameter mimics a heartbeat. It's an interesting way to write and speak, which unfortunately has basically been ruined forever by school teachers beating it into the ground and inevitably causing anybody to use it to be compared to Shakespeare. And it's neither here nor there really, but personally, I'd call this a massive failing in the way that we teach language and literature. Anyway, back to what's being referenced. I do think "I hath been iambic on that ass" is kind of a terrible line. And this is probably a take that'll make a few of you upset, but I think Watsky doesn't stress the iambic enough. It's a bit too subtle, and I think ends up making the choice fall into the interesting bar trivia category rather than really having a huge impact on the battle. But still, writing an entire rap battle in iambic pentameter and then having it work out with a beat is really impressive. On principle, this deserves a point, but I can't sit here and award a point to every line because it's in iambic pentameter, so what I'll do is allow that iambic on that ass line slide, award a blanket 3-pointer for the use of iambic here, and we'll move on. Groovy? Groovy.
My rhyme's a classic. Your prep is drafted by kindergartner high on acid.
Okay, that's not bad. I'm worried a little it's falling into the same trap Beethoven got in of "I'm Shakespeare and you're not, so I win," but insulting Dr. Seuss's work, which usually features fairly trippy, colorful visuals and has a certain surreal goofiness as made by a small child high on hallucinogens, is pretty solid. So here's a point.
Yo, man, you're an old white soldier boy who has no swag.
Oh wow. In a show where we've had Chuck Norris jokes, the ShamWow guy, and Justin Bieber, somehow I think this may have been the most dated moment of the whole series so far. This one's crazy because it's basically double dated since it contains dated language from 2 different time periods. First off, swag is something people still sometimes say, but if you weren't there, I don't think you get how prevalent the word swag, the idea of swag, was at the time. Hearing it in this rap, I had a sleeper agent moment where I had the sudden urge to just yell, "YOLO swag!" It physically hurt to hear is what I'm saying, which makes combining it with Soulja Boy, which was a dated reference even in 2011, hurt even more. Soulja Boy is having a little bit of a nostalgic comeback at the moment as people rediscover some of the Y2K era, and that's fine since hearing Soulja Boy tell him once in a while is no problem, and Kiss Me Through the Phone is kind of a banger. But boy, in 2007, I don't know how he survived. That song was ginormous, and frankly, after the first minute or so, you've heard everything the song has to offer. But then it just keeps going. Even in modern nostalgia settings, you can see people getting bored and going for another drink during the back half of the song. Can you imagine a time when you'd literally hear this double-digit times a day? Like, it just wasn't good after a while. Anyway, Watsky here even adds the dumb little dance move, but it doesn't help when you've somehow designed the most scientifically dated cringe line from 2011 possible. Also, Shakespeare was literally also old and white. How this line does not work. Let me count the ways.
And no gonads, egads, it's so sad.
Gonads are balls. He's saying you don't have balls. Kinda lame on its own. Egads is the scientist from Luigi's Mansion, but beyond that, it's an old-timey way of saying, oh god. Unfortunately for Watsky, it's not old-timey enough, as it was first used around 50 years or so after Shakespeare's death. So, almost, but not quite historically accurate once again. Shakespeare really out here hitting us with the "you got no riz on God for real sheesh." True poetry in motion.
And to top it off, you're not a doctor.
This is true. Dr. Seuss is the moniker used by author Theodore Geisel. I suppose Mr. Seuss doesn't have the same ring to it, and unlike the Pib guy, he's a bit too insecure to shed the persona. Not the most amazing diss, but I'll say it's worth a point.
I've never seen a softer author.
Hey, no, I'm rejecting that line. Yes, Dr. Seuss was most famous for kids' work, but that doesn't mean his writing was soft. Oh, The Places You'll Go is a fantastic work exploring going from childhood to adulthood. Cat in the Hat just slaps, period. And the 60s animated Grinch, which Seuss had a heavy hand in creating, is one of the best Christmas watches. And also those videos where the guy raps the books, those prove that the lines Dr. Seuss wrote go hard. And B, much more importantly, yes, he is known for his kids' books, but my dude also made hundreds of World War II propaganda pieces, including this insane image of the mustache man as a sea monster covered in, well, the Symbol, which needs to be a punk album cover ASAP. And Dr. Seuss also wrote an erotic novel with not safe for work illustrations. Unless it's the soft core kind, this author is not soft.
You crook, you! I bet you wrote the Twilight books too!
Oh boy, Twilight. So back in 2011, calling the books and movies bad was basically considered automatic comedy in some circles. Now, looking back, clearly there's an element of sexism and the hate of Twilight has a bit of an incel vibe to it, to put it bluntly. Sure, the Twilight books and movies aren't particularly great on a technical level, but they're phenomenal entertainment and melodrama, and the haters at the time basically actively ignored that fact to try and be superior. What I'm saying is, it's a bad look. And so this line has aged pretty poorly. The entire cultural zeitgeist that it was built around has completely disappeared. It's pretty wild, and this is exactly the type of line I created this channel to find. Frankly, this whole verse has been, and it's been a blast. But no matter how much fun I'm having, I'm still taking off another point. If not for the Twilight reference, then for him calling Dr. Seuss a crook with no context or justification. Sure, you can just throw out insulting words, but they're weak disses when there's no weight behind them. I'm not quite talking about the actual Seuss performance yet, but I do overall love this idea of him actively drawing in his characters and literally letting his art speak for him. It looks really cool and opens up a lot of stylistic possibilities.
I would not, could not on a boat read any of the boring ass plays you wrote.
The would not, could not word scheme is from the Dr. Seuss book Green Eggs and Ham, so wrong character, but we'll let it slide. Frankly, as long as it's any sort of actual Dr. Seuss reference, we'll take it at this point. The line doesn't do anything crazy, but it's just a really solid opener, so it gets a point from me.
Even Horton doesn't want to hear you, and Cindy Lou Who is afraid to go near you.
Horton's whole thing is he's willing to listen to someone when no one else will. A person's a person, no matter how small and all that. And Cindy Lou Who is willing to befriend the Grinch when everyone else thinks he's yucky. So saying Shakespeare makes even these characters not follow through with their compassionate nature is the insult. But it seems incorrect to suggest possibly the most overexposed playwright of all time, whose work would likely benefit from being performed less, has no one who wants to hear him. And I don't think the guy who on record had theater friends, a wife, and probably multiple affairs didn't have people who would go near him. I think both lines end up more as neutral filler because they aren't structured poorly and we're making solid references, but I don't think the disses actually land successfully.
You bore people to death! You leave a classroom looking like the enemy bad!
This image here has not aged particularly well for reasons I will not be elaborating upon on a YouTube channel. But there is also something about the concept of a bunch of high school kids simply combusting because of how boring Shakespeare is, and I find that really funny. And we have the Little Macbeth reference, nothing deeply researched, but yeah, if you haven't read Macbeth, basically the whole plot of the book is people dying, so this is a fitting reference here, and you know what? I've talked myself into it, we're awarding a point.
I entertain a child at any age. You gotta translate what you said on the opposite page.
Many Shakespeare printings come with translations of outdated words on the opposite page to the original text. It's a really awkward way to read a story that makes it basically impossible to connect with the text on an emotional level. Having survived the American public education system, I have some specific painful trauma regarding these books that makes me really relate to this, and I'm awarding a 3. If I didn't have that personal connection, maybe I wouldn't be as high on the line, but I don't know, I still think it's a pretty good diss regardless.
You gonna battle with a cat in the hat? Little kids get scared when I step on the mat.
Wait, what? He literally just said that he can entertain a child of any age, and now he's saying kids get scared when he steps up? Which is it, my guy? That's just bad. That feels like a script oversight or something. Because those lines don't feel at all like they belong next to each other. What a bummer, since Peter was doing so well on this one.
Think your ruffle neck ass gonna rap to that?
Ruffled neck ass is pretty funny. Is it a point though? Probably not. Close though? Really, really close.
I got a best-selling book about me coming back.
I might be cheating and slipping in a little goodwill from the previous line here, but I think this goes pretty hard. Referencing, of course, the Return of the Cat in the Hat, the sequel to The Cat in the Hat, I've heard it features twice the cat and double the hat, which is enticing, to be sure. Alright, it's time. Why the fuck is Mickey Meyer playing Dr. Seuss like a goober high on Quaaludes? And I'm not talking about him being silent. Seuss himself had a fear of public speaking to the point it's hard to find video of him talking, so I'm fine with that decision. But from what I can tell, the real Dr. Seuss was a very well put together man. But this dude, he's doing the weird and creepy heavy breathing thing. His bow tie's crooked. He looks like he just walked into the wrong building in his intro. Multiple shots, he's just staring at the sky, tripping balls. He's not a doctor, as established, but he uses a stethoscope on himself like a child at the doctor's office. He learns what hands are in this shot. This face, this is the face of a killer, Bella. I mean, I get maybe the MO was Dr. Seuss will display childlike wonder to reflect his books, but if so, they went way overboard and tipped into something just so awkward and off-putting for him. I'm doing something I've never done before and subtracting a blanket negative point for this portrayal. Since Meyer has no lines but he's still impacting the rap, I figure this is a fair way to do it.
I'm switching up my style like the Beatles with my pieces. Each is such a wonder with a plethora of features.
Alright, so now in verse 2, Watsky's doing the Watsky fast rapping style trademark, which really impressed me heavily as a kid, but these days, I don't know, I've heard this gimmick so many times, and frankly, fast rapping tends to sound more or less the same no matter who's doing it, so it still comes down to the bars themselves, speed or no. With these first bars, he compares the variety of his plays to the variety within the music of the band The Beatles, and I think it's a good comparison. The Beatles were known for genre hopping with their songs, and Shakespeare similarly is famous for tragedies, comedies, historical dramas, and romances, and highlighting your skills in this way is, I'd say, worth a point.
They're pathetically predictable. You're thinking doom mining through the trisyllabic meter and some ghetto muppet creatures.
And I think this is worth a point too. He's contrasting his own diversity and range with Seuss's work, which he characterizes as one-dimensional by comparison. Side note, the trisyllabic meter, similar to how Shakespeare is known for iambic pentameter, is the writing style which Dr. Seuss is most associated with. And I believe his characters are also using it this whole rap. I won't give the blanket 3 points for it though, because frankly, it's much easier and more common to work with in a songwriting context. Also, ghetto muppet creatures is a pretty funny way to describe the average Dr. Seuss character, so we'll take it.
The bard is in the building, it's a castle and my boss, but
I'm keeping this neutral, but these lines feel like almost random ad-libs. The bard is the building makes some sense. A nickname for Shakespeare is the Bard, or the Bard of Avon, so he's basically saying Shakespeare's in the house, which is just some filler. But it's a castle seems to be just word association with building, and I'm a boss is a reference to the Lonely Island song Like a Boss, which was huge in the late 2000s.
better parliament the positive, I'm killing it.
What? Well, I guess we haven't had a straight up perplexing line yet in this battle, so here we are. I bet I'm Parliament. I don't think it's a Shakespeare reference, and I don't think it's some sneaky funk music reference either, but I don't quite get how Shakespeare is the British legislative body. Is it somehow related to him being the boss? I don't really know, and I'm taking a point off since as far as I can tell, this is totally nonsensical.
Iller than the plague and never caught a cholera.
Iller than the plague I never caught is playing off the double meaning of ill and refers to the fact that Shakespeare, though living in heavily populated areas of England during multiple severe plague outbreaks, miraculously avoided ever contracting it. And cholera is another deadly bacterial disease that was common in Shakespeare's time and actually pretty common pretty much up until we got water treatment and waste management. So pretty recently all considered. It's a weak point, but I'm still willing to award it.
A baller on some cricket bowler business while you're sitting in the bleachers.
A baller on some cricket bowler business. I kinda hate this line. Baller is another fairly dated slang term for basically someone successful. A cricket bowler is more or less the equivalent of a baseball pitcher, but for the game cricket, which is popular in England. Now, I don't really know or care a whole lot about cricket, but I was surprised during my research that of all the things referenced in this rap, cricket is actually the one that isn't anachronistic for Shakespeare's time. While he was alive, he could have, in fact, been on some cricket bowler business. I doubt he was, but the sport has existed in England since about the 1550s, and during Shakespeare's peak, it was transitioning from a children's game to a real sport with amateur and professional leagues. While I do appreciate this historical accuracy, I still don't think it's a very good line, but I'll keep it neutral.
You rap fast, you do. Yes, you rap fast, it's true.
I really do wish the Cat in the Hat had gotten at least one last diss in here rather than just saying you rap fast for 2 bars, but oh well.
Now let's see how you rap versus things 1 and 2.
Oh no. Well, there's the moment the battle falls off the rails. I mean, what is there even to say? Look at it. Just look at it. It's deranged, unhinged, disturbing for small children. Let's just get it over with. The Globe Theatre is famously the place where many of Shakespeare's plays were performed in his time. Line doesn't do a whole lot, it's just an I'm gonna beat you type one, so neutral, moving on.
Yo, you may have wrote the script, but now we're running the show.
Christ, Lloyd's pitched up voice for this is awful, especially since it's double tracked, it's just ear shattering. Anyway, okay, yeah, so that's just another "we're gonna beat you" line, this time referencing that Shakespeare wrote scripts. I really hope someone actually says something in this verse. I'm getting worried.
You can take your fancy words and send them back home to your mama.
Kinda just a filler line. I mean, it almost does something by criticizing the language of Shakespeare's works, but we already had a way better take on that diss earlier from The Cat in the Hat, so this retread isn't worth much.
Break a foot off in your ass with a feety pajama.
I fear we're slipping towards negatives, but that really was just another filler line.
Then we'll cook you up and eat you with some ham and green eggs.
I love this goofy little move Peter does, but this is, again, another "we're gonna beat you" type line, this time referencing green eggs and ham. I'm letting him cook, but I'm now extremely worried we won't have much of a meal by the end of this.
Wake up with your leg, make no mistake, be in the rain.
Okay, no, that one doesn't even try. Break off with your legs? Is that some really weird stretch reference to the theater expression "break a leg"? I really hope it isn't, and it's just a random threat, to be honest, because if it was, that's pretty poorly done. And "we're in a rage" does not work when you don't sound angry even a little bit.
All does not end well when we bust out a cake.
Okay, back to neutral. We're about to beat ya, we swear. But this time we reference the Shakespeare quote, "All's well that ends well." I hope they can keep that promise, since this is the second to last line of the rap.
You getting upstage, Bill? Yo, you just got played.
Boo. Your closing line is a double pun? Get out of here. You're done, Lloyd. Go home, hit the showers, come back with some better bars next time. Upstaged and you got played? Wow. So bad. I'm also, frankly, doing another special addendum point here. This portrayal of things 1 and 2, I mean, I suppose it's not the most misguided idea. They are just some kind of weird little creatures after all, but this choice for the vocal style, this costuming, and the bars managing to say not a single thing of interest, I feel compelled to take off another point. How poorly the things are portrayed here really is detrimental to the quality of the raps on the Dr. Seuss side. Some might say I robbed Seuss right at the end there. Others might say Shakespeare should have been miles ahead. Fact is, this battle was messy. The rap is all over the place and overall pretty inconsistent. Shakespeare's first verse sounds good, but it is kinda terrible when you actually think about any of the lines. But his second verse saves it and is mostly solid. Meanwhile, Peter's Cat in the Hat verse is probably secretly the best of the battle, but the Thing 1 and 2 verse is, well, probably one of the worst in the whole season, and maybe the whole series when you get down to it. Add to that Mickey Meyer making some bizarre decisions, or at least the director telling him to make bizarre decisions, and it's a messy recipe for a bit of a kitchen nightmare. I have weird feelings after this battle. I've had probably the biggest shattering of rose-tinted glasses I felt in a while, with this episode not living up even close to how it was in my mind. Oh well, c'est la vie, I suppose. Hopefully the next one will turn out to be double, triple as good as I remember. Hey soul sister, ain't that Mr. and Mr. in the rap battle? Stay tuned, neighbor. Subscribe to watch the next battle as soon as it's out, drop a like, leave a comment, and support me on Patreon if you can, and I'll catch you next time.